Hurt of the Tuscaloosa News and Tidesports.com. Cecil up there covering the SEC tournament for those outlets. Cecil, how about a little cowbell to get us going on a Wednesday?
Yeah, that's I can't ever hear a cowbell without thinking of Mississippi State. So it's hard to. A good percussionist goes a long way, though, but 40,000 of them are a little too many.
Oh man, you get those going on a Saturday night, and
that game over there 2 years ago.
Oh,
was the loudest at the end. Given even allowing for there's still some open air areas in that stadium. It doesn't, but that fourth quarter was as loud as anywhere I've ever been.
I agree, Cecil. There's hearing the cowbells at State, and then there's being what seemingly is inside the cowbell. And it seemed like we were inside the cowbell that night a couple of years ago, didn't it?
It did. I understand and appreciate their tradition. I understand the exception to the artificial noisemaker rule, but the commissioner needs to stand down there and try and have a conversation in the fourth quarter of a close game in Starkville and see if they're a factor, if they affect play or not.
Yeah, it's laughable, isn't it? That rule, air quotes, when it comes to the cowbells, artificial noisemakers in Starkville, especially. I'll tell you something. It isn't artificial. That's the bank accounts of some former Alabama players right now, Cecil, after the last couple of days between Kareem Jackson, Landon Collins, and C.J. Mosley. We're talking about $120 million in that neighborhood of guaranteed money on their new deals. Greg Byrne,
Kicking Carpenter's new deal.
Yeah, I don't know how
much
that's
what his
guaranteed.
Guaranteed figure is, but he's 4 years, $21 million. So.
Right. And it'll be interesting to see what the guaranteed money is for the former Alabama offensive lineman. You talk about a guy who's quietly, Cecil, just made a lot of money playing professional football.
He has just been steady, and was probably one of those guys who, right after he was drafted, they would have called him one of those busts, because he wasn't a first-team All-Pro, but he's been a steady, money-making guy, for what now, 7-8 years with the Seahawks and then the Jets and now with the Falcons.
Between Kareem, CJ, and Landon, those three guys could get Greg Byrne about a quarter of the way to that Crimson Standard fund that he's trying to raise, Cecil.
Mark's still out there. Mark's going to sign somewhere.
That's right. Yeah.
So
I would think they're
pretty good cycle.
Getting a call or two maybe from the old alma mater when it comes to alumni donations. Those 3 or 4 or 5 guys would seem to be at the top of my call list anyway, if that's something I had on my to-do list for a Wednesday. Cecil, we know that you're up.
Landon's deal is crazy. I mean, good for him. I'm excited for him, but it's crazy. And yet, of all those guys and all those millions, the big Bama winner yesterday may have been Freddie Kitchens.
Yeah, we talked about that in the opening segment. Freddie, he's going to have some weapons to work with, and I know they've got some concerns defensively, but they didn't hire Freddie to coach the defense, did they?
No, they did not. And you give him, you put enough toys in his toy box, and he'll find a way to use them.
Absolutely. Toys in the toy box. I know that you were. You talk about a lot of toys in this basketball league in the Southeastern Conference. I know you were on the panel of all SEC voters, Cecil. How tough was that in deciphering between first-round guys and second-round guys? And I guess as much as anything, I wanted to talk to you about your guy at the point guard position in the SEC this year, because I understand Tremont Waters is a very talented player.
Right.
And a guy that you could certainly make your first team point guard or your first team guard, one of them, and not really solicit much of an argument. But, Jordan Bone of Tennessee, some of these other guys, how difficult was that for you in making those choices?
it was hard. The way the AP does it, which I like better than the way, the coaches have an 8-man first team and an 8-man second team, which I understand makes it more inclusive. More guys get to say they were all SEC or first team all SEC. But the AP does we just had 10 spots. We had 5 first and 5 seconds. So it was really tight. Now we do have enough flexibility. You're not quite like they don't want 5 centers or 5 point guards, but you can have 2 point guards. And my first team had Tremont Waters and Jared Harper on it. So you can do it that way. But it was tough, some tough decisions and some guys that are second team. And if you wanted to make the argument that, they should have been first team, then I'd have a hard, I wouldn't die on that hill of whether P.J. Washington should have been first team or second team. Kentucky people would swear up and down he should have been first team. Tennessee fans, and this isn't a knock at Tennessee fans, I understand, think they should have had 3 first teamers on a 5-man off first team, and they didn't win the league. They're the 3rd seed. So, you try and balance those things out as best as you can. But my first team was Williamson Schofield from Tennessee, Tremont Waters, Jared Harper, and Daniel Gafford. So that put a couple of guys who were first teamers, and I don't argue with P.J. Washington, Quindari Weatherspoon. I had those guys on the second team, along with Chris Silva and Tyree from Ole Miss and Bryce Brown from Auburn, who always shot the lights out every time I saw him. So, again, you can argue for Tyler Hero at Kentucky. Jordan Bone is a great player. He was the second team on the coaches, so I think I was right in the guys that I had. But it's if I had done a third team, those guys would have been tough. That's how tight it was. Davis at Ole Miss, I didn't have him on there. He's a great player. Naz Reid wasn't a great scorer, but was really tough inside guy. Nebhart at Florida came on at the end of the year. Claxton at Georgia, they weren't a very good team, but he's a good player. So yeah, it was difficult. Grant Williams is the easy one. Everybody, he was the unanimous choice. He was easy for everybody. After that, I thought Harper played great this year. I think he made a big difference for Auburn. He was second team on the coaches, but I had him first team on the SEC. So, those things are they're not cut and dried. And as long as you make a good, conscientious effort, I've seen them all play. I have an eye test for all of them. Plus, know the statistics, know the advanced statistics, and so you try and be fair about it. Dante Hall, somebody could have made an argument for Dante Hall. I wish Dante had been a little more consistent. I don't have any argument with him making the defensive team. But, we did not do an all-freshman team. That one would have been tough, too.
Really good group of newcomers. And I guess as much as anything, it speaks to how the league has elevated itself. Although, there's been so much talk about the coaching additions, and obviously recruiting is an extension of that. Player development, certainly an extension of those coaching hires. But I guess just in looking at these first and second all-SEC teams, that kind of tells you all you need to know about where the league is now, Cecil, maybe compared to just 2 or 3 years ago.
It's much better. It definitely is. In some ways, there were more individual superstar, individual great players stood out more. They really separated themselves. Now it's just deeper. It's just deeper.
Where did you go in terms of the coach of the year choice? Was it? Yeah, it was as obvious for you as it seemed, I guess.
You either do it one of 2 ways, and you face the same issue with Nick Saban every year. I thought Nick Saban did a great job this year, considering some of the factors that he had to deal with, as far as injuries, new quarterback, etc. But sometimes you go with the guy who just exceeded expectations. I voted for Rick Barnes last year, and he won it last year. I thought Rick Barnes did it. It came down to me. It came down to Rick Barnes, Calipari, and Kermit Davis. And I wasn't going to consider Will Wade. And I'm not the judge or the jury on Will Wade. But, there's enough of a cloud there where he certainly did a great job. They finished 9-0 on the road, 16-2 in the league. But this isn't the time that I was going to vote for Will Wade. And you can say, oh, well, that's wrong. You should only consider what's on. Hey, he didn't coach his team's last game. So,
kind of an auto DQ there.
I voted for guys who coached 18 SEC games. And
that's a fair enough standard, I'd say, Cecil.
Yeah. And so again, that's not saying he didn't do a good job, which he clearly did, but he didn't finish out the season. So, so yeah, I thought Kermit did a great job. Nobody expected anything from Ole Miss, and they won 10 league games.
Picked last in the league, I think, in the preseason.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Memory serves me correctly there. Yeah. Cecil, as we look at this Alabama team entering SEC tournament play against that Ole Miss team tomorrow, is there any reason to think there's anything left in the tank for Avery Johnson's club at this point, following the latest loss there at Arkansas over the weekend? I mean, on paper at least, and this is probably the biggest issue Alabama fans have with Alabama basketball, is that pretty much identical to what we saw last year headed to St. Louis. But is there any reason to think that this team will take a sort of similar path through the first couple of rounds in Nashville?
Well, tougher draw than it was last year. We just got through talking about Ole Miss. And I think they're playing more consistently than A&M. A&M was pretty good last year. Made the Sweet 16. Let's not say A&M wasn't a good team. And Alabama beat them at the buzzer. The second round matchup, Auburn at the end of last year, Auburn had a great year last year, but after McLemore got hurt, they were not the same team, and showed it both in the SEC tournament and in the NCAA tournament. But resume-wise, that was a huge win for Alabama, as Kentucky would be. But it's a big difference in playing Kentucky in the second round, who's won the tournament 4 years in a row now, right? And aren't they going for the fifth in a row? I think that's correct. So love to play in the tournament, get big crowds, will be the home team for that game. That's a little different than playing Auburn in St. Louis. So can they do it? I guess they could. Obviously, if you were a space alien who didn't have any contact, you'd say, well, their first round matchup, they beat that team, and then their second round matchup, they already beat that team, beat them both in Tuscaloosa. But things change, and there's a different context. So if they could do it, they could probably still play their way in with 2 wins. I don't think one will do it. A lot of people say, well, that might get them into Dayton. You saw one did disappear last night in Gonzaga's loss. That put St. Mary's in, where St. Mary's probably wasn't going to get in at large. So I'm not sure one win will do it this year. Now, there may be a lot of that kind of talk on the broadcast tomorrow. That was a great angle for last year's game, last year's Texas A&M game. That Colin came down and Alabama's entire season and NCAA season was on the line, and that his shot put him in and so forth. And you'll hear some of that on Arkansas, Florida too, I think. Because that's what people want to talk about this time of year. But whether one win would do it, I don't know. And whether Alabama can get 2 wins with Kentucky sitting there, I don't know.
When we talk about coaches in the SEC, Cecil, the first shot, I guess you could say, has been fired, reportedly at least, in the form of the dismissal imminent dismissal, it seems, of Billy Kennedy out at Texas A&M, and similar to what we hear around Tuscaloosa and some other fan bases in the league as well, a lack of consistency, sort of that up and down nature of A&M basketball over the last 8 years or so with Billy Kennedy at the helm, apparently going to be enough to do him in. When you look around the league right now, in addition to Billy Kennedy, how many more openings can you sort of foresee there being down the road?
I don't know that there would necessarily be another one. You know, we'll see how Alabama does in the tournament. You know, and this is, by the way, somebody may decide to take an NBA job. You know, somebody may, you know, decide to take another college job somewhere. Don't know what the situation will be at LSU. You know, so let's discount all those kind of extraneous factors. You're just talking about guys whose athletic department decides that they don't want them back. I don't know that there'll necessarily be another one. You know, Avery's the one that people talk about, but I don't know that decision has been definitely made at this point. So everybody else is either doing well. You know, there'll probably be 8 teams in the tournament. I don't know where else they'd be a little grumbly. Maybe if Arkansas beats Florida. I still think Florida would probably get in barely. Might be in Dayton. Mike Anderson, you know, they closed strong. I think he's tempered a little bit of that. Certainly if they could win on Thursday and beat Florida, and then they're in a pretty decent bracket situation. So we'll see what they could do. You know, they'd be probably unlikely to make that move. So I don't, you know, Georgia's Crean's new. I don't think Vanderbilt, even if they lose to A&M and finish out an absolutely historic 0-19 run, I think that Drew's getting a pass for this year because of the injury to Garland.
Yeah.
Don't know, but I don't think Vandy's about to make that move.
So if you're an Alabama fan,
Kwanzaa, I think, okay at Missouri. They didn't have a great year, but you know, I think he's okay. I think Mike White probably needs to pick it up next year. Avery probably needs to pick it up next year if he's back. Mike Anderson probably needs to pick it up without Gafford. So we'll see how they do. But they have some young players. So I don't think there'll be a huge turnover. Now, again, if Calipari goes and decides to coach the Lakers, then we'll see. Be really interested to see who A&M goes after. Almost inevitably, Travis, if A&M fires their guy, then Texas is going to fire their guy, right?
Seems that way. Yeah.
Can't let the other side get one up on you in that rivalry. You know, if they're going to go, if A&M's going to go spend some money, then by gosh, Texas is going to go spend some money.
It's like the Yankees and the Mets and the Giants and the Jets in New York City,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, they really
got to own that back page.
Got to be the guy. You know, don't want the Aggies to get to walk around bragging on their new coach without you going and hiring one, and vice versa. You know,
well, if you're a college basketball
Texas
coach right now,
Tom Herman, then you got to go hire Jimbo. You know,
yeah,
got to do it.
You just want to be mentioned with that A&M job the way those people throw around money right now. See, so if you're just mentioned with that A&M job, you got big money coming your way.
The guy I'm interested in, and you know, it's amazing how this seems to happen in football and basketball. It's Kelvin Sampson at Houston. You know, who's been in the big time, had some issues, went back to Houston, has proven himself again, and I would think that would be a guy that A&M would look at pretty strongly. You know, and whatever issues he had, you say, well, didn't have any problems at Houston. So we'll see. We'll see. You know, the NCAA thing makes this off season really volatile. You know, maybe LSU's looking, maybe they're not. Maybe Arizona's looking, maybe they're not. Who knows? Who knows who else it's going to affect.
Yep.
So and who else is hireable? Is Rick Pitino hireable for somebody? I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know. So a lot to play out on those coaching things. But one thing I do want to say, Billy Kennedy, what a really good guy. Really a good guy.
Been through a lot too.
He's been through a lot on the court and off. Has had some struggles, and yet has been consistently good with the media and a good guy. I think that they didn't draw this year. They didn't draw very well, and I think Texas A&M, looking around the league, just like you talked about, said, "Hey, this league's getting better and better, and are we going to stay the same?" So, and Billy's been there This has been 9 years, I think, 8 or 9, and so they sometimes it's time for a change. And
apathy is the final straw, right, Cecil?
Yeah.
And looking at Alabama right now, the home crowds have still been pretty good down the stretch here.
Yeah, it wasn't a problem. Whether it would be next year if they got off to a slow start or whatever. Winning fixes everything. Winning fixes.
Maybe the NIT might tell us something coming up here too, though.
I'm sorry?
Maybe the NIT might tell us something too, though, if it plays out that way.
It could. They could lose to Ole Miss Thursday, and I don't know at 17 and 16 if they'd get a bid.
Yeah. True.
Everybody says, "Oh, they're on the NCAA bubble; they'd be a top seed." Maybe, maybe not. All of a sudden, they're the 10th team in the SEC, and would they get one ahead of Arkansas? Maybe, maybe not. What about South Carolina? What do you do with them? So because South Carolina just doesn't have enough wins yet. They're just not far enough above 500 to get an NCAA bid. If they don't make the finals at least. So, maybe there's a spot there, and then at 17 and 16, maybe there's not. We'll have to see.
Well, Cecil, as always, we appreciate it, my man. And enjoy your time in Nashville. And we look forward to their coverage, as always, and look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Okay, appreciate it.